It is to the fenland area known as Marshland Smeeth that the story of Tom Hickathrift, the original Norfolk giant, belongs. Tom's father was a large man and he worked hard. It's said that he could do 2 men's work in one day. When he had Tom, he tried to educate the lad, but it has to be said that he really didn't take to learning. Tom's mother was a tender lady, and Tom became a bit of a slothful lad. He did nothing but sit by the fire and eat. As a child, he ate as much as 5 ordinary men could in one sitting, and by the time he was 10 years old, he was already 8 feet tall. They say his hands were the size of spades. Tom grew to a giant of a man. One day, Tom's mother asked him to go and fetch some straw from one of the farmers who was a charitable man. Tom, being lazy, really didn't want to go. His mother lost all patience with the lad. She couldn't hold it in any longer and shouted, "Get your lazy self out of there, I need some straw fetching." Reluctantly, the young man dragged himself out of his chair by the chimney, and bent nearly double, he crawled out of the cottage. "Look at the size of you," his mother scolded up at him as he stretched. "All you do is laze around in there, whilst I'm out here trying to make a few coppers to keep your enormous bulk in food." Vacantly staring around, he asked his mum, "What was it you wanted me to do?" Again his mother, losing her temper, said, "Can't you remember what I said, you great oaf? I said, go fetch me some straw." Tom, still looking vacant, asked, "Where do I get it from?" His mother repeated that he should go to Farmer Walton, as he was a charitable man. Tom went off to the farmer to ask for the straw. He told Tom, "Take as much as you like." Tom gathered and roped some straw bales into a huge pile. "He must have more than 20 hundredweight there," commented one amazed farmhand. The farmer laughed and called Tom a fool. "Do you really think you can carry such a heavy load?" he jeered. Tom flung the load over his shoulder as if it was light as a feather. The farmer and his men stood by speechless. Tom's strength became known. There was no longer any basking by the fire for him. Everyone wanted to hire him for work, telling him that it was such a shame to live such a lazy life. Tom started to work for one, and then another, and one day a woodsman desired his help to bring home a tree. Off went Tom and 4 men besides, and when they came to the tree, they began to draw it into the cart with pulleys. At last, Tom, seeing that they were unable to lift it, said, "Stand away, you fools." Then he lifted the tree, set it on one end, and laid it in the cart. The woodsman asked him what reward he'd take. "Oh, a stick from my mother's fire," said Tom, and looking towards a bigger tree, he lifted it, put it on his shoulders, and went home. Tom's fame soon spread to a wealthy brewer at King's Lynn. Wanting a good strong man to carry his beer to Wisbeach, he hired Tom. The brewer was very careful to tell Tom the route he must take around the Smeeth, an area of boggy marshland between the 2 towns, for a fearsome and terrible ogre lived in the cave there. Ogres in general are not very pleasant, and this one was worse than most. He had a monstrous appetite for eating passers-by. Unfortunately, avoiding the ogre meant taking the long route, over 20 miles around the Great Common, which belonged to the 7 villages of the marshland. A very long detour for one so naturally lazy. It was a scorching hot summer's day, as Tom wearily hauled his cart of beer barrels along the winding path. Weary of the long trek, he foolishly decided to take a shortcut through the Smeeth into the ogre's territory. Tom very quickly realised this had been a huge mistake when he saw all the human skulls hanging from every tree along his path. Tom was shocked at the sight of them, but not as shocked as what he saw standing on the path in front of him. There the ogre stood, just staring. If you thought Tom was big, you should have seen the ogre. He was 12 feet tall and 6 feet around the waist. A large ogre indeed. "Who gave you authority to come this way?" the ogre roared. "I'll make an example of you for all the rogues under the sun. See how many heads hang on all the trees? Yours shall hang higher than all the rest as a warning to all." Tom didn't know what he was going to do as he didn't have a weapon. His whip would be no use against a monstrous beast 12 foot in length and 6 foot around the waist. While the giant went for his club, Tom for once thought on his feet and took his cart, turned it upside down and took the axle and wheel for shield and sword. They would be good weapons against the ogre. The fight was long and hard. The sound of heavy blows echoed across the marshland. The ogre was strong and rained down heavy blows on Tom, but Tom gave as good as he got, and he was quicker and lighter on his feet. A well-aimed blow to the side of the ogre's head sent him reeling. The ogre was tired with the long fighting. He asked Tom if he'd let him drink a little. "Oh no," said Tom, "my mother taught me better than that." "Who'd be the fool then?" And seeing the giant beginning to tire and to fall upon his blows, Tom thought it best to make hay while the sun shone, and, laying on blows as fast as he could, he brought the giant to the ground. All in vain were the giant's roars and prayers and promises to yield and be Tom's servant. Tom laid at him till he was dead, and then, cutting off his head, he went into the cave and found a great store of silver and gold. Imagine his amazement at the glittering hoard of treasure that met his gaze. There was not only gold, but glittering jewels lay everywhere. Dazzling crowns, ruby necklaces, diamonds as large as his fists sparkled in the gloom. Astonished and unbelieving, Tom ran his fingers through the brilliant gems again and again. Eventually, he pulled himself away, rapidly repaired his cart, and hurried home. The next day, Tom took the brewer and some of the villagers to see the ogre's head and the treasure, and all the men leapt for joy. The giant ogre was a great enemy to all the country. The news was spread all up and down the countryside how Tom Hickathrift had killed the giant. Everyone celebrated joyfully. Tom was respected before, but now the people loved him. With common consent, he took possession of the cave and the land. He pulled down the cave and built himself a large house. The ground that the giant kept by force for himself, Tom gave part to the poor for their common land, and part he turned into good wheat land to keep himself and his old mother, Jane Hickathrift. He took as his family crest a circle with a line over it, symbolising the axle and the wheel that he used to defeat the ogre. He was no longer plain Tom, but Mr. Hickathrift, hero of the marshland, the one person smart enough to defeat the dreaded ogre. Tom lived a long and happy life. Today, on the church of Walpole St. Peter, there is a little stone figure that is known as Tom Hickathrift, the hero of the marshland. They say Tom's real resting place is in Tilney churchyard in a grave 8 feet long. The locals like to joke and say Tom had to be folded in half to fit in.